recording now. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Gamertag VR. Today we are doing the VR Link interview. We've got game director Michael Wentworth-Bell and production manager Nick. I nearly got there. I was like, Nick Acciaretto.
That was awesome.
Is it?
Acciarito.
Yeah. Acciarito. And Nick Acciarito. Yeah. I'm going to edit that out in a minute.
That's all right.
Like you
can leave it in. It was classic.
Thank you for joining me today, man, to talk about your game. And I know you've been super busy with E3. Tell me what that was like. That must have been incredible.
Yeah, E3 was crazy for us. It was our first E3 ever, and it's our first game ever. So it was a wild week for us, and pretty surreal actually being there and having the game on display in first hand. So it was an awesome experience, but it was a bit of a whirlwind for us.
It was crazy too because we spent pretty much most of the time in our booth. So Tripwire was showcasing 3 games at E3 in the concourse area.
Yeah.
And so we had press appointments for most of the event. So in total, we had about 20 minutes to check out the rest of the show.
Oh man!
So we did like a back on the main floor and then back to the booth.
Did you meet anyone like you've always wanted to meet in the gaming industry? I imagine there's so many big names there.
Well, I mean, yeah, the coolest, probably one of the coolest persons we met was Nathi, the VR content creator.
Yeah,
that was great because we've been huge fans, loved it.
Absolutely, so that was massive. And the other one, which was like just mind blowing, was John Romero. Like. He was there. He was at an adjacent booth, and he was showing off his latest game. And he actually came over at one stage, and we sort of shook his hand, and we were just like a bit starstruck. And then we asked him to play the game, and he said yes. So, which was just like mind blowing. So he actually played the game for like 20 minutes, and seemed to enjoy it, and that was just wild for us. So
So I saw one of your posts off Twitter regarding that you got some awards from Upload, was it?
Yeah, that's right. In the end, we got a few nominations and walked away with 2 awards.
Oh, wow.
One of them was the Tom's Guide Best of E3, which is awesome because that was not a VR specific award. It was just, across the show.
Yeah.
We got Upload VR's the Best of E3, which was like for us absolute huge validation. It was amazing.
And we also got a Worth Playing one, which was like their finalist one as well.
That's fantastic.
And look, the truth is, we were just happy to be like showing off the game at the show. We didn't even think or consider any of the awards. And then on day 2, we sort of got nominated for one, and we were like, "Wow, I can't believe we got nominated." And then we just kept getting nominated. We got nominated for like 4 awards and won 2, and it was just crazy.
To be fair, like guys, your game looks of incredible quality. When I done I done the VR E3 thing, so I thought Upload absolutely smashed it with their VR presentation, and your game excited everyone. And we done like a look back a little bit later in the week, and your game is one of the ones that people wanted to talk about, and they wanted to see the trailer, and they wanted to go over it again. So, and on my Discord, we've got some questions for you guys, and obviously I've got some questions for you. So please tell us about the concept of Espire 1 VR Operative.
Sure. The concept is that set in 2029, and you are an Espire agent, so you're a drone operator of the future. You're working for the IFA, so inspired a bit, Mission Impossible's got their IMF, the Impossible Mission Force.
Yeah.
We've kind of made up the Intelligence Force of Australia because we were going to use the real one, like UK's, you've got MI5, MI6. In Australia, we've got the Australian Secret Intelligence Service, because they were going to call it the Australia Secret Service, but then it'd be ARS for short. So
Right.
We just thought we'd make up our own one, Intelligence Force of Australia, and the kind of idea is they've been working for over 10 years on this Espire program where they've got at one end you, and the play space that you're standing in is your Espire control theatre. So it might be your living room or your bedroom, and that becomes like your holodeck space called the control theatre. You put on your VR hardware, and every move that you make is then translated to the Espire Model 1 robot, which might be 1,000 kilometers away on assignment.
I
with
love
only
that because
11
you've introduced like an inception there, because you're going to be in VR going into VR sort of thing, you know, and that's cool. That's like going deeper into the rabbit hole. I like that. That's good. Yeah.
It's literally to try and explain, or I guess apologize for all the annoying things about VR. Like if your motion controller loses tracking, it's just because, you know, there's a bad signal between you and the Espire. Or if you can't feel the damage, or you can't, you know, like we're nowhere near as buff as you. So when we try and play the game and pick up like a, massive, you know, a stunned guard, he might be like 130 kilograms.
Yeah.
You can't feel that weight.
Yeah.
But that's because it's the Espire doing it, not you.
That's
or
awesome.
If you're climbing, you know, metallic objects with these robotic hands, you know, that are like you might not be able to physically do, but you can climb up these metal gantries and pipes and things to get the jump down on enemies. You know, there's no kind of haptic feedback, but it's you know, it's all explained by the robot doing it remotely. So
Tripwire are the publisher of your game, and on the website you sort of stated that they're overseeing it. They also brought us Killing Floor Incursion, VR I'm talking about, which was absolutely fantastic. The control methods of using the moves on the PlayStation, for me, are still some of the best, considering everything you can do in that game. So what does that mean for you that Tripwire are involved as the publisher and stuff?
yeah, I mean, it means everything. I mean, they've been so helpful for us over the journey. Obviously, we're all pretty green at our studio, Digital Lode in Australia, and it's our first title that we've sort of, you know, created. So having a publisher that's able to just, you know, not just publish the game, but also help out with like some dev support, you know, industry contacts. They've opened a lot of doors for us just in the industry in general. And even just things like reviewing our builds and giving us tips on lighting and audio and things like that.
Yeah.
And even if they're not doing all of it, they're just providing the guidance and that expertise and that experience that they've obviously got to really bring that game up a notch to a higher standard. So they've been so much more than just a publisher for us, but it's been amazing having a partner like that on board.
Yeah.
I think like the biggest thing as well is the opportunity. Like without Tripwire, this game probably would have already come out as an early access title like every other VR title.
Yeah.
But there's like 0% chance. There's no way it would be on PlayStation or Oculus Quest.
Right.
And there's no way we would have been at E3.
No.
There's so many kind of things that have happened because of Tripwire. And that's sort of why it's happening, because they released Incursion. It did well on PlayStation, and that was right at the time that we were pitching the game to them.
Yeah.
And so they could kind of look at Incursion on PlayStation and go like, cool, we'll give VR, because VR is still a pretty small market.
Yeah.
But that was really helpful in getting the deal over the line.
And that's one of the things I suppose that keeps us motivated too, is that Tripwire's put their name to this project, and
they've really put their neck out. Like they put their neck on the chopping block.
How did it happen? How did this all come to fruition? What happened? When did you meet Tripwire?
Well, in February 2017, I released the very first Espire prototype video.
In this mission, the player needs to take a photo of these secret documents using their PDA. They need to have a clear line of sight to the documents in order to get a correct photo and complete the objective.
And it was a 2-minute video showing this is what the game is like. And from that, most of the core team jumped on. But also Tripwire's community manager, Jared Creasy, he's been with Tripwire since the start. He saw it and he showed the video to the CEO of Tripwire, John Gibson. And so from like the start of February, the CEO himself was emailing me. And back then it was just a one-man band. And he's like, do you have an NDA? And I would finish the email going, I don't even know what an NDA is.
Yeah, it's like, what the hell, yeah.
And he was like, show me a game design doc. Do you have like a pitch deck? And I was like, I'd hang up and be like, all right, crap, I've got all weekend. I'm going to make a game design doc. And then Monday I'd send it to him. Yeah. And so Tripwire really were involved from the start. But there was no team and there was no game. And so it was just a really slow burn until end of 2017. Film Victoria, the local government, funded our game to make a demo, which we were planning to release publicly, but Tripwire jumped on and said, look, if you make that a vertical slice, we'll double Film Victoria's funding, and we want to use that as an option to publish the game. And that was our kind of proving ground as a team. We had a very short amount of time to make basically a segment of the game. We made a whole mission that's about 30 minutes to 80 minutes long.
Tell us a bit about the actual studio. Tell us about Lode Entertainment, who you guys are and what you've done previous.
We're currently, the majority of the team is in Melbourne, Australia. There's 9 of us that work there on site. And this is our first project as a company. And for most of the team members, it's also our first industry project as well. There's a few team members that are quite seasoned in our industries. Our concept artist, our 3D art lead, Darren Wallace, he's quite popular on YouTube. He does a lot of movie spoof videos, 78 million views last time I checked. And so he's an extremely talented 3D artist, but he's used to 3D renders where it's 90 minutes a frame. Yeah. And now he's working on a game where it's 90 frames a second. So, but the cool thing is he's bringing a lot of like film industry level effects and trying to work out how to get them happening with VR. So it's sort of been really awesome, especially with Oculus Quest and PSVR. There's a few scenes in the game now that look quite amazing that he's managed to get down to like 500 triangles. And we look at it going, how have you actually done this? And he's using this crazy projection painting technique where he paints all the details onto really low resolution geometry. Yeah. So all the members of the studio are a bit like that. Our narrative lead, Alex Shedlock, wrote the game lore Bible for Sorrento VR. He also worked on the Solus project and another VR title. I don't think it jumped over to PSVR, but it was called Organ Quarter. Right. It was a bit like Resident Evil 1. Silent Hill 1 in VR.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah, it's an awesome game. It's worth checking out.
Overstimulating. This is a grand achievement.
You made it this far, thanks to merits.
It's become the cage. We, the experiment.
You have to go deeper into the organ quarter.
The team, the rest of us, it's probably our first project, but we've got a few guys straight out of uni that are focusing on the optimization of the game's assets so that the PC version still looks awesome if you're using like a 2080 RTX, but the Oculus Quest Android version and the PS4 version can still look good with the same assets, so it's not an easy task at all.
No. Yeah, that was one of the questions that I was going to come up with a little bit later, but I might as well cover it now. You're bringing this to multiple headsets all at once, and one of particular interest at the moment is the Quest. It seems to be really taking off. A lot of people are mentioning to me that that's what they want. They want to buy it, or they're waiting for it to come back in stock. And the fact your game is already coming to the Quest is a fantastic achievement for yourselves. And from a technical standpoint as well, the Quest has really surprised me with what it's been capable of so far.
It's been a total team effort. So the core team of 9 that are basically working on this full time, everyone's had to jump in and contribute to get the game to run on Oculus Quest. So we're building our game with Unreal Engine 4, and a significant portion of the game was written in the Blueprint interface. I don't know if you're much familiar with it, but it's basically like a way of coding your game that's about 28 times slower than if you did it in C++. Right. And that was totally fine for PC and even PS4, but with Quest, it's kind of like, get real. And so a lot of like on the programming side, we've had to do huge optimizations, but it also comes down to the art side. And we've actually designed the game from the ground up to support Quest, PSVR, and PC. So we've tried our best not to create, problems like environments that you have a draw distance of, thousands of kilometers, that you can freely move through. So we're trying to not make too many challenges for ourselves.
Yeah, and I suppose one of the big reasons that we got the interest of Oculus and Tripwire and that even in the early days was because when it was released sort of last year that the Quest was coming, previously the Santa Cruz when it was sort of in beta version, was because that headset was coming out, and so the original goal from sort of day one was to create a game that would be would run awesome and be really rich on the PC platform and PSVR, but also be able to have a kind of one-to-one experience on the Quest. So there's some obvious graphical and texture-wise things that and art-wise changes that you just have to make as a result of running on the Quest because you've got limited headroom.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we've tried to really focus on making sure it looks as good as it possibly can, but mainly keeps the kind of gameplay one-to-one. And we noticed that ourselves when the Quest kind of first came out. We'd be playing Robo Recall, and you can definitely notice the difference between like PC version and then the Quest version. But within sort of a few minutes, you're just having fun shooting robots, and you forget all about it. So
yeah, exactly, man. That's exactly what I tell people.
The gameplay, just keeping
the
gameplay as close as it can.
When I was doing like a live stream, first thing people want to ask is like, what's the trade-off? Do you know what I mean? But all right, there's some less reflective surfaces, like the guns don't quite look the same, but I think the freedom of the Quest adds a lot to VR. I think there's a lot to be said for that, and I really hope that is the way things go forward. Like you've got the Rift S as well. I take it you've got a Rift S that you've tried and stuff. I mean, obviously you've still got that cable, but it's another step, isn't it, of freedom and movement.
I think the most fun thing with Quest compared to PC and PSVR is that you don't have to be doing snap turns anymore. I think when you play PSVR a lot and you play front-facing PC games a lot, you become an expert at knowing in the real world where the camera is so that you're not going to lose tracking.
Yeah.
And with Quest, it's funny because you put it on and you're still trying to make sure that in the real world you're facing forward so you keep your tracking, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I fell victim to that, dude, loads of times playing games. I was the same. I think it was Vader Immortal was the first game where it sort of, without knowing it sort of forces you to spin around, move around. Robo Recall does as well, but you still got the option to move. As when you're doing Vader Immortal, the Jedi challenges, you just automatically turn around to get things behind you. And like when I'm live streaming, people are saying, well, you can turn instead of turning the character. And I forget, I do. I'm so used to being forward. So yeah, that's a really good point to bring up. Why make a VR game? Like, what was the, why VR? Why VR?
Well, at least I guess for myself, I started working on Espire in about mid to late 2016. And before that, I was just trying to make heaps of other VR experiences. It was all because I was super into VR. I finally got to the point where I could afford a headset. So I tried to buy the Oculus DK1, but it was right when the DK2 came out. And they changed my order to the DK2 because they're like, why would you buy a DK1? And I put it on, and I played I Expect You to Die, which was a demo at the time. And right at the start, you've got to dodge a laser in the chair.
Yeah.
And I just kept dying over and over again, and I just couldn't work out why. And then a friend who was watching said, why don't you just move? And I was like, you can't move. It's VR. You can't move yet. I thought all you could do was turn, but when I moved my body, dodged the laser, like literally from that point on, I was like, this is the future of games. Like it's going to take a while. I thought it'd only take a year or two, but this is where immersion is. This is immersive entertainment now. Your whole body influences the game, and from that point on, I was just like, we have got to do something. And Espire was the one thing that picked off, and the whole teams jumped on from the early videos that were released about the game. So the whole team we're laser focused on trying to do, mechanics. So all our favorite stealth game mechanics, even the way that you repair your unit, we're just trying to make it that it's a requirement that you use VR to play the game.
So you mentioned in the Espire 1 trailer, full locomotion without motion sickness. So what's that all about?
Well, yeah, it's the core reason, or one of the core reasons why we've made the game. And so we when we were trying to prototype stealth game mechanics, the first thing we tried was teleport. And you can definitely play a game with teleport locomotion, but always from day one, we wanted a game that you could expect to play with the same kind of movement from PC or console shooters where you can strafe precisely. It's actual full locomotion. But the problem with that is people that are new to VR, and even some people just full stop will get simulator sickness if you do artificial locomotion like that.
Yeah.
And there's a very vocal part of the community that say, well, no, you can just get your VR legs and move on. But to cater for as many people as possible, we try to come up with this control theater movement system. So we spoke earlier about the concept of the game.
Yeah.
You're standing in this holodeck style room. The idea is that as soon as you connect to the Espire robot, your video feed in your head-mounted display is from the Espire's eyes.
Yeah.
But the moment you do any artificial movement, its view, Spire's view shrinks down to the size of a floating iPad in front of you, and your peripheral vision all around you is the control theater that you're standing in. So the hope there is that you remain immersed in the game, and it's tricking your brain into thinking that actually, you're standing still and you're just watching this happen on a floating iPad.
Yeah.
And as soon as you stop artificial movement, it zooms back to full frame Espire.
And the idea there, I suppose, is that because people do, the more they play VR, the more that we've seen anyway, that people typically get used to the movement. And so the idea is that it can be quite restrictive at the start, but the idea there is that first-time players or people susceptible to simulator sickness will hopefully not feel sick. But as they get used to it, they can increase the size of that window and change the transparency of the surrounds so that it's less obvious, and then, it's obvious again. So we'll probably have between 3 and 5 presets or something like that, of different settings depending on your comfort level, till ultimately you can turn it off completely and have full free move. But we wanted to make sure that there was, that we tried to reduce a bit of that barrier for entry, because I feel like everybody wants to free move in a game, especially a stealth move where little movements are really important. I feel like people want that, but it's just not so accessible for everybody. And so we really want to try and make it so that, we've got a way to almost some training wheels to get used to that locomotion sort of setup.
So instead of just adding blinders, you've actually developed nearly like a completely different game in the game. You know what I'm saying? Is that right? Like when you said it, I thought of Pixel Ripped, where you have the controller and you're playing the game. The way you made it sound to me is you can either be in first person as the Espire robot, or you can take control of the Espire robot via remote control, like a video feed. Yeah?
It's basically an advanced version of the comfort features you see in many other games. So we hope it doesn't break the immersion too much. In summary, like the moment you do any artificial movement, so you might, in the real world, you could take 2 steps to the left, and in the game world, that might mean that you've just had the Espire walk off a ledge.
Yeah.
The moment that there's any artificial movement added on, the game shrinks down your view to like a floating 3D iPad shape.
Yeah.
That's your Espire's view. And then the moment you've stopped artificial movement, it comes back. And so by default, it is pretty aggressive because there's a lot of first-time players that will feel sick. And the last thing we want is for a player to walk away going, well, I'm going to puke now.
Yeah.
And so advanced VR players can either completely turn the feature off or dial it in the way they want. The feature itself has got a lot of kind of features to it. So every second it actually captures the luminosity level of what you're looking at, and it will set the walls of the control theater to match that, so that if you're in a really dark area, the control theater environment's also dark. If you're in a bright area, it'll lerp up and be bright as well.
Yeah.
And it also, the iPad itself, its shape, it can resize based on what you're doing. So when you strafe sideways, the window gets smaller. Or when you're falling, the window gets smaller. If you're sprinting, the window will get smaller. And if you're moving very, very subtly, the window gets larger. So it's a dynamic shape as well.
So
That's
rather
incredible.
than just blinders, it's kind of contextualizing the blinders so that it sort of tricks you to thinking, hey, I'm in that room controlling this robot remotely. I'm not necessarily experiencing it, firsthand, which you still are. So it kind of is like blinders, but some more intelligent blinders in a way where it's there's some context to what you're seeing as opposed to just a grey box around your footage.
Yeah.
It's it's the room that you were in, so it's kind of tied back into the narrative as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think, dude, that is actually completely mind blowing, and I didn't know any of that, and I think that is incredible. What you've done there, you could have just added blinkers, but you haven't. You've literally changed the way the game is played, which is fantastic.
And through our work with Tripwire during the process, they really like that feature as well, as far as the movement system goes, and the locomotion comfort feature. So in their most recent update of Killing Floor, they've actually implemented that control theater feature, so that it's now in the latest version of Killing Floor Incursion.
Wow,
which is cool.
It is amazing. Yeah. That game still, as I said earlier, man. Like when it comes to the move controllers, there isn't. I think only Skyrim maybe has been on the same level as, considering on the move controllers you've got no joysticks.
That's right.
They made it work, you know what I'm saying? And I always hope that every developer looks at Tripwire and says, these are the control methods we're going to use. So I already expect that when your game does hit, regardless of platform, it's going to play wonderfully.
Well, the current control scheme, which we are tweaking a little bit, is the same as Killing Floor Incursion. So hopefully if people are familiar with it, they'll be used to it. The only difference is you've got the top button on the move controllers, and pushing either of them will start you moving. And if you push the second, so you're holding down both, you'll be sprinting.
Yeah.
So and in the game, if you're sprinting, you obviously can run much quicker, but that's when guards start to hear you. And so you kind of want to have that control to stop sprinting anytime you want to avoid being heard.
So that's going to bring me on to my next point of in your trailer. You mentioned there is multiple approaches to each mission. So obviously the fact you're mentioning sprinting would mean to me that maybe I could run through that game shooting the hell out of everything and hoping to kill everyone. Or you can do the stealthy approach, which I think everyone would really want. So
well, we'd love to share like a speed run with you, because we, in the team, at least myself, I'm a massive fan of like speedrunning games.
Yeah.
And in VR, it's like a totally different thing. It's unrelated, I think, to the core of the game. But I think with VR speedrunning, you want to have that option to just run through it as quick as you can. And as a player too, you want to be able to decide, I'm going to run through this base, all guns blazing. I'm just going to get to the end. Let's throw stealth out the window.
All units.
One's receiving damage.
Mary is detecting.
Or I want to do it really slowly. I don't want anyone to see me, and I want to completely ghost the mission. I don't even want to leave a bullet casing behind.
Nice.
You should probably chat about the scoring.
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose, and that depends on how you want to play it. So we have tried to focus on like player volition, and that it is optional whether you take the stealth route or you run and gun. The trade-off if you're running and gunning is that everything you do as the Espire robot working for the Australian government has a cost to the government. So the idea is if every bullet has a cost. If you kill a guard, it's like $3,000.
Okay, yeah.
So everything, activity and everything you do in the game has a cost. And if you destroy an Espire robot, you can repossess another one throughout the mission and then play on and keep going.
But at a cost.
But at a cost. Each robot is $220 million, so it gets expensive.
Of course it is.
So it gets expensive quickly. So I suppose if you're going for the highest score, which would be the lowest cost, you've got to be very careful about the way you approach the mission and take it as stealthy as you want. Yeah. Then the idea was that we also, because we love speedruns, we thought, it'd be cool to have both. So, it's kind of like GoldenEye right back in the day. There's awesome speedrun videos of that game, but originally it was kind of a bit of a stealth game, and you could, but you could sort of choose how you played that as well. So we want to have the option to have some cool speedruns down the track if it's popular enough, but also have that sort of core stealth game at heart. So.
I love that. So, what about you two personally when you play it? I mean, what do you prefer what's your play styles? What would you prefer to play the game?
Myself, we hope the game will be like a power trip a bit. So that's how I like to play in terms of if you chain up your effects. One of them is a Espire Instinct, a bit like Max Payne. You can hold down a button and slow down time.
Oh man!
You release the button and and time, returns to normal. But you can use that and abuse it really. So you can kind of, it's hard to explain, but you can slow down time. You can grab the ledge, throw yourself in slow motion, let go, and then because you did it in slow motion, it's like 30 times quicker than if you did in real life. So you can kind of fly, or lunge. So at least when I'm trying to play the game, I'll try to move through the game like that by throwing myself up onto a gantry and then throwing to the next, and trying to use the non-lethal approach until you make a mistake.
I mean, the fact that the Espire 1 robot's got the magnetic hands and stuff, you're adding a lot of replayability and a lot of ways to affect each mission. Your game is called Espire 1. Does that mean there's a sequel in the works already? Are you thinking about DLC, or what is the 1 representative of?
The 1's representative of the actual robot you use. So you're using the Espire Model 1 robot, and so, actually throughout the game, you end up using various alpha and beta prototype Espires until you can kind of upgrade to the full-fledged Model 1 unit. So that's why the name of the game is Espire 1 VR Operative, because that's what you are. You are the Espire 1 VR Operative.
Yeah.
In terms of post-release, the number one thing that we want to do if the game's successful is support our second content offering, which is the virtual challenges. So a bit like Metal Gear's VR mission.
Impressive, Snake.
25 that we're shipping that are short. Maybe they'll take between 1 to 7 minutes to complete.
Yeah.
And things like hold up all enemies in the area and reach the goal before the time expires, things like that.
Oh, man.
And we want to support
missions, there's climbing ones, there's a bunch of really short little ones that are just test different mechanics throughout the game.
Yeah.
So there's even, the climbing ones are literally like climb from start to the end without dying or time running out. So, and all of those have 3 leaderboards each. So for the 25 challenges, that's 75 leaderboards, because challenge number 1, get from start to end, you could do that trying to go for the shortest time. Yeah. That's the first leaderboard, or the lowest cost, where you don't want to do anything. Every time you use Espire Vision, it's $1,200. And then the third leaderboard is lowest combined, where you've got to really master the game, and we don't know how to do that, where you've got to go for the lowest time and cost at the same time. Wow. And that's where it might mean that, I've got to, it's actually, I could probably shoot 3 guys. That's $3,000 each person. That's a $9,000 cost, but it's worth it because I'll be able to finish this segment much quicker.
Yeah.
So there's kind of like all those kind of strategies, which is kind of really fun. But we're hoping after release to support the game with free virtual challenges and a mod kit. And for PSVR, we realize that means that we hope we can have a strategy where we can collect the best released maps if the game was popular and successful, and then push that to PSVR and Quest, whereas the PC version with a mod kit would obviously have lots of user-generated content if the game did well. But in terms of sequels and multiplayer, we've got a massive list of ideas that we cut, and a bit like trying to make an iPhone 1, then an iPhone 2 and whatever, we had to just narrow our scope as low as we could feasibly get away with in terms of the best quality game we can execute on. And a few of those ideas that didn't make it, we hope they can either be free updates or a sequel. The big thing that we like is that Tripwire, if you follow their games, Killing Floor 2, Rising Storm, they still support Killing Floor 2 right now with 3 updates. There's one coming out this week, I think. And so they've got a million ideas too and that's their kind of ethos. They've got so many free summer, Halloween packs that they release. Yeah. So they're going to hopefully drive that with us.
It makes sense because a lot of people talk about some games sort of dying, but then sometimes they're not backed up anymore. Someone pushes it out into the wild, and then there might even be something wrong with the game, and the developers nowhere to be seen. And to hear what you're saying is fantastic. And also going back to the virtual reality training, when you was talking about I Expect You to Die and the fact you didn't know about moving because of the laser, you're going to be adding training effects which will sort of give people ideas they might not have had originally of how to approach a level. So that's really cool as well.
Absolutely. I think the other cool thing is that we know we're not the best people at playing a game yet, and we're like so excited that if it's popular, we're going to see some really cool strategies and techniques to get through levels that we didn't even think of. So
Oh,
I think
man.
we're really excited to see that if people like it, you know.
I've got no doubt on
We-
that. I've really have you talking about speedruns quickly. Have you seen the super hot speedrun?
Yes, and I feel like that's when it really opened up. I thought it would be more popular than it was. It was a very, very, very popular speedrun, but I thought like VR speedrunning is so cool because your dexterity, your height, so many extra factors come in other than just
Moving your
laser
fingers
precision
quickly.
on your controls.
Yeah.
And
You're right.
yeah, I mean, we even been thinking here, like, what happens if we're trying to even put it in our game, like, what happens if someone's doing a speed run and they have two friends and each friend grabs a controller, they'd be able to move the controller quicker than your arms could or further than your arms could to activate sequences,
What if you throw a headset, if it's a Quest and it's wireless, and you throw it to a mate, and that gets you to the end of the room quicker, and just crazy wild
Yeah.
things. Like,
Exactly.
throw it.
You know what the internet is like. I'm sure things will happen, and you'll be like, "Wow, I can't believe they come up with that." That'd be fantastic. What's so good is like speaking to you guys. It just sounds like there's so much more depth than what an incredible trailer already showed. I'm sure when people see and hear this, they're going to be even more excited to play your game. And I believe it is coming this year. Is that right?
It's August, so we've got not much time left to get through, but it's currently going through certification, and we're hightailing to get the Quest version and PSVR version as good as we can.
Yeah.
And it's not long at all, and it'll be out there.
On a personal note, thank you ever so much for doing this interview. It's the first of hopefully many, and I wish you all the best for your game. It looks and sounds fantastic, and I think he's really worthy of what everyone's saying. The hype is pretty big.
We can't thank you enough for having us on the show. This is like basically our first proper interview, and we're super excited to see people are interested in the game, and we're also super excited to see what you think of it. Hopefully we can get you a playable build and get your honest thoughts and feedback on it.
Man,
and if
thank you.
Yeah, Chris, it's awesome. Just thank you so much for having us on there and just having a chat with us, taking the time. We really appreciate it, and this is the stuff that means everything to us. As we've been on the other side of the world, just working in a dark room for like a long time now, and it's just awesome to have people even show any interest. Is humbling for us. So thank you, truly.
Take care of yourselves. Yeah, look after yourselves. See you soon.
Thanks, man. Take care.